He boasted to his mistress that I was unemployed, that nobody would hire me. He said this while his own salary file sat on my desk. He thought he'd hidden the job offer letter, slipping it to her like some secret gift. What a shame. I was the one who hired that company to begin with. If he wants to give her gifts, I'll send her something with a much stronger taste, the complete implosion of her life. My name is Quinn Brooks. I am 36 years old, a fact that seems to be the source of my husband's current favorite parlor trick, pitying me. Tonight, our house in Ridgeport is filled with the particular kind of noise I have come to despise. It is the sound of men who believe they are masters of the universe, but who are, in reality, just middle managers. The air is thick with the smell of expensive bourbon, the kind Ethan buys to impress, and the faint, tangy note of the catering I was not supposed to be able to afford. You have to understand, the market is just brutal. Ethan Cole, my husband, says, swirling his glass. He has the rapt attention of his 3 closest friends, all VPs or senior directors from Nova Meridian Solutions. They are a Mount Rushmore of mediocrity, all polo shirts and smug expressions on a Saturday night. NMS is thriving, naturally, but only because we trim the fat. We only keep the essential players. He glances at me, a subtle, practiced flicker of his eyes. It is just long enough for his friends to catch the implication. I am the fat. I am the non-essential. I hold my glass of club soda and offer a small, supportive smile. This is my role tonight, and for the last 6 months, the down-on-her-luck wife, the one who bravely left her nebulous marketing job at some long-forgotten tech firm and just cannot seem to find her footing again. It is a convincing performance. I was born in Ohio, raised to be pleasant, to not make waves, to be supportive. I have weaponized that upbringing. It is just so hard to get back out there, I murmur, just loud enough for the man sitting closest to me, Greg, to hear Greg, who I know just faked his last 3 expense reports. Everything seems to have changed so fast. See, Ethan says, clapping Greg on the back, his voice booming with false magnanimity. But talent will always rise, right? That is what I keep saying. The strong survive. He gestures around the great room, at the exposed beams, the custom Italian leather sofa, the massive flat-screen television currently showing a muted football game. You build a life by what you earn, by what you secure. I watch him. This man I have been married to for 7 years. I watch him take credit for the roof over his head, the clothes on his back, the $90 bottle of scotch in his hand. He has no idea, not a single clue, that he is a guest in my house. He thinks his vice president's salary, which I have seen the itemized reports for, pays for this life. He meticulously manages the joint checking account, lecturing me last week about a $40 charge at the bookstore. He has no access to the offshore accounts, the trust fund, the dividends that pour in quarterly from investments my mother taught me to make before she died. He especially has no idea about the primary holding company that receives all of it. Ethan is a peacock, and I built his cage. He just thinks he owns it. Seriously, Quinn, says Mark, another one of the NMS disciples. He is the one whose department has the highest turnover rate. Are you even looking anymore? Because I feel like I see you at that yoga place every time I drive by at, 11 in the morning. The laughter is immediate. It is not cruel, not exactly. It is the laughter of men who see a woman's time as flexible, as unimportant, as filler between their own important appointments. I feel the familiar, cold tightening in my chest. I have practiced this. I let my shoulders slump. Just a fraction. I look down into my drink, letting my hair fall forward to hide the expression in my eyes. I need them to see me as weak. The entire plan depends on it. Ethan, seeing his opening to play the supportive but firm husband, steps in. He puts a hand on my shoulder. It feels heavy, proprietary. She is looking. Mark, we are just trying to find the right fit. Are not we? Honey, he squeezes. It is just, finding a role that matches her previous experience is proving difficult. The market is not exactly screaming for, well, you know. He does not finish the sentence. He does not have to. He has painted the picture perfectly. I am a washed-up 30-something woman with a useless resume. Actually, Ethan continues, a slow, theatrical smile spreading across his face. He looks at his friend, then back at me, as if he has just had a brilliant idea. You know, my buddy Kevin over in logistics support is hiring. They need an administrative assistant. Seriously. The air crackles. The other men look away, suddenly fascinated by the football game, trying to hide their smirks. This is it. This is the new low. I mean, it is a foot in the door. Quinn, Ethan says, his tone now patronizing, as if explaining a complex concept to a child. You would just be answering phones, managing a calendar. But it is a start. Gets you out of the house. You would have to interview. Of course, I cannot just get it for you. You would have to prove you can handle it. He says it with such sincerity. He truly believes he is offering me a lifeline, a chance to scrub toilets in the building he thinks he runs. I let a single small tear well in my eye. I blink it back, a perfect performance of humiliated pride. Ethan, please, I whisper, my voice trembling just right. What I am trying to help, he says, throwing his hands up in defense. God forbid I try to help my wife. I am going to check on the appetizers, I say, pulling away from his grasp. I walk away from the circle, my head down. I can feel their eyes on my back, a mixture of pity and contempt. I make it to the kitchen and stand for a moment, gripping the edge of the cold, quartz countertop, the one he told the designers he hand-selected. I stare at the stainless steel refrigerator he bragged about. Every single item in this house, every appliance, every piece of furniture, is a line item on a budget report that I approved. I know who pays the salaries of every single man in that room. I know the precise, 6-figure bonus Ethan is expecting next quarter, the one he thinks he earned through grit, but which is actually being awarded because the parent company, my company, needs to keep Nova Meridian's management feeling confident before a planned acquisition. The anger is a cold, clean thing. It does not burn, it focuses. I have been patient. I have been gathering evidence for months, ever since I saw the first texts, the first hotel charges he tried to bury in his client entertainment budget. I have been building a case, not for a divorce, but for an extraction. My second phone, the encrypted one, vibrates silently inside the pantry's charging drawer. I slip my hand in, my back to the living room, and pull it out. A single, new message from Dana, my chief of strategy and the only other person on earth who knows who I really am. The message is brief. Package delivered via bonded courier, signed for. It is on the hall table. I take a slow, deep breath. The offer letter, the one from Brighton Federal Technologies, the defense contractor Ethan and his friends drool over, the one they all see as NMS's biggest competitor and ultimate prize. The letter is addressed to Quinn Brooks, offering her a senior strategic role with a salary that would make Ethan's head spin. A letter I had BFT send as part of a very specific, very delicate test. I slide the phone back into the drawer. I smooth my dress, pick up the platter of bacon-wrapped scallops, and compose my face into a mask of fragile dignity. I walk back into the living room. Ethan is in the middle of a story, his voice loud, his glass raised again in a toast to himself. He does not even see me return. I look at him, this small man playing king in a castle I own. The test was simple. What would he do when presented with evidence that his unemployable wife was, in fact, being recruited by the best? I already know the answer. I have seen the way he looks at me. Good, I think, placing the platter on the coffee table. Let's see what you do with it. The last of Ethan's friends did not leave until well after midnight. Now, 2 hours later, the house is silent, save for the sound of my husband snoring beside me. He is a heavy, oblivious weight in the bed, drunk on the bourbon I paid for and the praise of men who work for me. I slip out from under the covers. My bare feet make no sound on the thick-piled carpet. I bypass the small desk in the guest room, the one Ethan graciously allowed me to use for my little job hunt. My real office is in the sub-basement, hidden behind a false wall of 18th century French wine racks. Ethan thinks it is just a high-end wine cellar, a perk of the house. He has never tried to open the reinforced steel door concealed behind the Bordeaux. The room requires my thumbprint and a retinal scan to open. Inside, the air is cool and filtered. 3 monitors glow, casting a blue light on the polished concrete walls. This is the nerve center of Caldwell Kinetic Group. Caldwell was my mother's maiden name. CKG is my fortress, built on a foundation of her tragedy. She was a brilliant software engineer, and I watched her second husband charm her, marry her, and then systematically leverage her patents and assets into his own failed ventures. He bled her dry, professionally and personally, leaving her with nothing but debt and shame when she died. I was 22, and I made a vow no man would ever see my full bank account. I would never be a lifestyle for someone to aspire to. Ethan Cole married Quinn Brooks, a pleasant, moderately successful marketing consultant from Ohio. He never met Caldwell. Caldwell. Kinetic Group is not a company. It is an apex predator. We are a private holding firm specializing in quiet acquisitions. We buy small, brilliant tech firms, companies working on encrypted communications, drone AI, next-generation ballistics, and we fund them. We streamline their operations and then, through our vast network, secure multi-billion-dollar contracts with government and defense agencies. And Nova Meridian Solutions, the company where my husband and his friends play their little power games, it is just one of our assets, a mid-level one, at that. CKG acquired a controlling interest 3 years ago. We own 62% of NMS, funneled through 3 separate interlocking shell corporations based in Delaware. My name appears on no organizational chart. My signature exists only on the master documents, locked in a vault in Zurich. To Ethan and his friends, the ultimate authority is just an abstract entity. The CKG board. I sit at the console and start a secure video link. The face that comes up is the only one on the planet I trust without question, Dana Mercer. She's in her early 40s, with keen, calculating eyes and dark hair pulled back in a strict, no-nonsense twist. She serves as COO and Chief of Strategy at CKG. She's the public presence, the one closing billion-dollar agreements in Brussels and Dijksee. To everyone else, she's the boss. To her, I'm the ghost owner, a title she uses with dry, respectful irony. The performance is over, I say. We do not waste time on pleasantries. How was the peanut gallery, Dana asks, her voice crisp. Ethan offered me an administrative assistant job, in logistics. For the first time tonight, I see Dana crack a genuine smile. Charming. Well, the bait is in the water. The package from Brighton Federal Technologies was delivered by bonded courier at 17:30 hours. It was signed for. It is on the hall table right now. Good. Brighton Federal Technologies, BFT. It is the white whale of the industry. The company Ethan and his friends talk about with a mixture of reverence and jealousy. They are desperate for that CKG satellite mesh contract, Dana says, pulling up a file on her end. Their CEO was more than happy to play along. It is a simple security audit. Dana, that is all I told BFT, I say, though she knows the entire plan. I told them we were testing the information security and personal integrity of our key subsidiary personnel. We needed to know if sensitive, high-value competitive data like a poaching offer from a major rival could be compromised. The BFT offer is a work of art. It is a genuine offer letter. For a fabricated position, Senior Vice President, Strategic Alliances. The salary package listed is double what Ethan makes. It is addressed to Quinn Brooks, and it is sitting on the antique console table in my front hall. You defined compromised as your husband, Dana states, not asking. I defined it as a test of his character, I correct her. He thinks I am a failure, an unemployable burden. What does he do when he is confronted with evidence to the contrary? Does he support me? Does he get jealous? Or does he try to bury it? I lean closer to the camera. Does he try to steal it? I pull up my other dashboard. This one is personal. When we moved into this house, Ethan was thrilled that NMS's Executive Protection Program included a top-of-the-line security system, courtesy of the company. He does not know that I own the security firm that NMS contracts with. The system he has access to on his phone is a decoy, a simplified interface. My system is layered beneath it. I have full audio-visual access to every room in this house, minus the bathrooms. I have keyloggers on the home computers. I have a GPS tracker on his car, the Audi A8 that NMS gave him, but which was actually a line item I personally approved from the CKG executive lease pool. Every piece of technology he uses by my permission. He is in the master bedroom, sleeping, I say, looking at the low-light feed. But I want the log from his personal phone, now. Accessing his NMS server credentials, Dana says, typing. It is a back-end query. It will not trigger any IT alerts on his end. The test was never just about the letter. His infidelity was the first crack. The casual, smug way he belittled me tonight in front of his sycophants was the confirmation. The man I married is gone, replaced by an arrogant, lazy executive who believes his position was earned, not granted. He is a symptom, Dana, I say, my voice low and cold. I have let him and his little club of misogynists run NMS for too long. Their expense reports are a joke. Their hiring practices are purely nepotistic, and their entire management style is a class action lawsuit waiting to happen. I look at the camera feed of the man snoring in my bed, a man who insulted me in my own home. He is a liability. If he touches that letter, if he intercepts it, hides it, or God forbid tries to leverage it for himself, he is not just failing a test of our marriage. He is failing a Caldwell Kinetic Group security audit. He is proving he is a compromised asset. Dana understands immediately. This is not about the divorce anymore. No, I say. A divorce is simple. This is a corporate restructuring. If Ethan Cole moves on that letter, I am not just teaching him a lesson. I am going to clean house. I will purge that entire management floor. I close the video call with Dana. I sit in the dark, cold room, the glow of the monitors illuminating my face. The house above me is silent. I am the ghost in my own home, the owner of my own cage, and I am about to see if the rat will take the bait. The next day, I feigned a migraine. It was a useful feminine excuse that required no follow-up. Ethan left for the office around 8, overly solicitous, patting my hand and telling me to rest. The moment his Audi cleared the driveway, I was in the sub-basement. The house was silent. I had the CKG security hub open on one monitor, a direct feed from our doorbell camera on another. I drank black coffee, strong and bitter, and I waited. I did not have to wait long. At precisely 10:17 in the morning, the doorbell camera chimed, sending a notification to my desktop. A man in the gray uniform of a private, bonded courier stood on the porch. This was not the usual UPS driver, and he was not carrying an Amazon box. He held a single, stiff, cream-colored envelope. I zoomed in. The return address, embossed in clean, black lettering, read Brighton Federal Technologies, Office of the Chief Executive. He rang the bell. I ignored it. Watching the monitor, he rang again, checked his clipboard, and then, following the exact delivery instructions I had provided to BFT, he opened the secure drop box by the door. He placed the envelope inside, closed the slot, and walked back to his van. The bait was in the trap. I spent the day in my operational center, tracking Ethan's digital footprint. He attended his morning meetings. He took an early lunch at 1:30, alone, at a sandwich shop near the office, not his usual steakhouse haunt. He was distracted. I could see it in the NMS server logs. He was logging in and out of the internal directory, but not actually completing any work. He was thinking. At 3:40 in the afternoon, his NMS calendar suddenly cleared. He left the office. The GPS tracker on his A8 showed him heading directly home, moving faster than usual. I switched my primary focus to the front door feed. At 4:03, his car pulled into the driveway. He got out, loosening his tie, his briefcase in one hand. He checked the main mailbox first, flipping through the junk mail and a catalog. He sighed, annoyed. He started to put his key in the door, but then he paused. He had spotted the secure drop box. He knelt, typed in the code our wedding anniversary. The irony was so thick I almost choked on it. The slot opened. He reached inside and pulled out the single BFT envelope. I zoomed the camera as close as it would go. He stood on the porch for a full minute, the afternoon sun hitting his face. He read the addressee Quinn Brooks. He read the return address. His expression went through a fascinating, rapid series of micro-changes. First, pure confusion. Why would BFT be writing to Quinn? Then, disbelief. Then his eyes narrowed in suspicion. And finally, as the implications settled in, a slow, ugly, unmistakable smirk spread across his lips. It was the look of a man who just realized the universe had handed him a solution to a problem, and a weapon. He did not put the letter on the antique hall table, where all my mail was supposed to go. He did not leave it for me to find. He looked up, scanned the porch ceiling for the camera he knew was there, but he only saw the decoy dome, not the high-definition lens hidden in the doorbell chime itself. Believing he was unobserved, he tucked the cream-colored envelope carefully inside his leather briefcase, alongside his company laptop. He entered the house. "Quinn," he called out, his voice falsely cheerful. "You feeling any better?" From the master bedroom upstairs, I called back, my voice intentionally weak. "A little. Still resting. Did you have a good day?" "Just slammed," he lied, his footsteps moving toward his home office, not the bedroom. "I am going to jump on a few more calls. Honey, just rest. I will handle dinner." The door to his office clicked shut. I immediately switched feeds to the camera hidden in the smoke detector above his desk. It was a top-of-the-line model, audio and video, installed by my own security firm. He sat down, clicked on his desk lamp, and pulled the envelope out. He did not open it carefully, as one would with important mail. He tore it open with his thumb, ripping the BFT logo. He pulled out the 3-page document inside. I watched his eyes scan the text. I saw them widen. I saw his eyebrows shoot up when he got to the compensation package. It was a number I had personally chosen with Dana. It was high enough to be transformative, high enough to be unbelievable, and more than high enough to inspire theft. It was double what he made. He read the job title, Senior Vice President, Strategic Alliances. He let out a low, disbelieving whistle. He shook his head, then actually laughed. It was a short, sharp, incredulous sound. This had to be a mistake. Then his eyes hardened. The humor vanished. He picked up his personal cell phone. I already had the keylogger and screen mirroring software active. I watched his screen pop up on my third monitor. He opened his encrypted messaging app to a contact listed only as R. The icon was a generic gray circle. But R was no mystery to me. My surveillance on Ethan had begun 3 months ago, after the first suspicious hotel bill charged to his NMS corporate card. R was Riley Hart, 29 years old, blonde, ambitious, and currently working a precarious short-term PR contract for Nova Meridian Solutions. She was desperate for a full-time position, a fact Ethan had mentioned disdainfully at dinner weeks ago. This PR girl, he had called her, practically begging for a job. Now, apparently, she was his priority. He laid the letter flat on his desk, smoothing the pages. He angled his phone and took a clear, high-resolution photograph of page 1, then page 2, then page 3, the one with the salary and signature line. He sent the images, one by one, to Riley. His thumbs moved quickly. "This is it. The opportunity I told you about." The reply from Riley came back almost instantly. The 3 dots appeared, then her text. "OMG, Ethan, is this real BFT? That salary is insane. I cannot believe it." Ethan smiled at his phone. He leaned back in his chair, a king on his throne. "I told you I could pull some strings. I talked to my contact. This is the offer. It is yours. You can use it. Just tell them you were referred by my internal contact. We will handle the name change on the paperwork later." Riley hesitated. But, Ethan, it has her name on it. Quinn Brooks. I watched my husband type the words that sealed his fate. The words that turned this from simple infidelity into a calculated act of corporate warfare. "Do not worry about that," he wrote. "My wife does not have your background. She does not have your drive. She would not last a day in a role like that. It would be a complete waste. This is meant for you." A waste. I stared at the screen, my blood turning to ice. The vulgarity of the betrayal was almost artistic. He was not just cheating on me. He was actively sabotaging my fabricated identity while simultaneously stealing from my own asset to benefit his mistress. There was no hot surge of jealousy. I felt no tears. That part of me, the part that loved this man, was long dead. What I felt was the cold, clean click of a machine locking into place. This was no longer a marriage. It was an audit. I saved the entire exchange. I timestamped the video from the doorbell camera. I timestamped the video from his office. I saved the screen mirror log of the text messages. I cross-referenced the GPS data from his car with the phone logs, confirming his calls to Riley on his drive home. I had a complete, ironclad chain of evidence. My secure line buzzed. It was Dana. I patched her through to my headset. "He is in his office," I said, my voice flat. "We saw the file transfer," she said, her voice grim. The keylogger caught the image uploads to his personal device, and the network monitor flagged the transmission to an unauthorized external number. "We have the receiver's identity. Riley Hart, NMS contractor. Correct." "Correct." "So it is confirmed," Dana said, her voice all business. "Your husband, a vice president at Nova Meridian Solutions, has intercepted a confidential document from a CKG strategic partner. He has transmitted that sensitive data to an outside, non-cleared individual. This is a catastrophic breach of security. It is a violation of his employment contract, his NDA, and about 3 separate federal regulations." "Yes, it is," I said. On my monitor, Ethan was deleting the photos from his phone, thinking he was covering his tracks. He slid the physical letter back into the torn envelope. He opened his bottom desk drawer and buried it underneath a stack of old tax returns and defunct checkbooks. He thought it was over. He thought he was a genius. "He told her it was a waste on me," I said quietly, a fact Dana did not need to know, but which I needed to say aloud. Dana was silent for a beat. "What are your orders, Quinn?" I thought of Riley Hart, so excited about her insane salary, so thrilled to be chosen. I thought of Ethan, so smug, so certain of my worthlessness. He wanted to give his mistress a gift. "He gave her the offer," I said. "It is only fair. Let's send her something better. Draw up the paperwork. Dana, I want to send Miss Hart an upgraded version." 2 days later, I drove my sensible, 5-year-old sedan, the one I keep for this persona, to the Nova Meridian Solutions corporate park. I had used a generic email address and a slightly altered version of my resume to apply for a role. I had invented a position in the NMS internal mentorship program. It was a low-level initiative, mostly ignored, designed for existing employees who felt stuck. My application, submitted as an external candidate, was irregular, but I had Dana nudge it into the HR queue, flagging it as a potential diversity hire, a term so vague and yet so urgent that they scheduled me immediately. I dressed the part of Quinn Brooks, the woman my husband described. My blazer was cheap black polyester, shiny at the elbows. I wore a nondescript beige shell underneath, paired with inexpensive trousers that were just a fraction of an inch too short. My shoes were black, rubber-soled, and scuffed. My hair was pulled back in a tight, low ponytail that managed to look both severe and lazy. I wore no jewelry save my wedding band, and my makeup was minimal to the point of looking tired. I was the picture of a woman struggling. I walked into the lobby, a glass and steel atrium Ethan was so proud of. He thought it projected power. I thought it looked like every other mid-level defense contractor lobby in Massachusetts. As I was checking in with the receptionist, I heard his voice. "Quinn." I turned, feigning surprise. Ethan was walking through the security turnstiles with two of his colleagues, the ones from the party. He looked genuinely baffled, his eyes raking over my pathetic outfit with a flicker of embarrassment. "Ethan, hi," I said, my voice bright and nervous. "What? What are you doing here?" he asked, keeping his voice low, clearly not wanting his friends to overhear the full extent of his wife's desperation. "Oh, just networking," I said, gesturing vaguely. "I had a coffee chat scheduled with someone in HR. You know, just trying to get a feel for the landscape." One of his friends clapped him on the shoulder. "Told you she was a go-getter, Ethan?" It was not a compliment. Ethan forced a tight smile. "Right. Well, good for you. I have a senior meeting." He ushered his friends away, casting one last, confused look over his shoulder. He did not know I had an actual, scheduled interview. He just assumed I was here to beg. Perfect. The receptionist, unimpressed, pointed me toward the elevators. "Human Resources, 3rd floor." The HR waiting area was a small, windowless room with gray chairs and outdated magazines. I was the only one there until, exactly 2 minutes later, the door opened and she walked in. Riley Hart. I recognized her instantly from the file Dana had compiled. She was 29, blonde, and radiated an aggressive, sharp-edged confidence. She was the polar opposite of my unemployed persona. She wore a bright red sheath dress, 3-inch heels, and carried a designer handbag that was a knockoff, but a good one. She looked like she was auditioning for a reality show about real estate agents. She did not look at me. She checked her phone, tapped her foot, and radiated impatience. After 5 minutes, a woman in a wrinkled suit came out. "Riley," she said, her voice instantly warm and sycophantic. "That is me," Riley said, standing up and smoothing her dress. "Brenda Michaels, Director of Talent Acquisition. It is so wonderful to finally meet you in person, Mr. Cole has said such wonderful things about you. He is just thrilled we are making this work. We have the full counteroffer packet ready for you to review." Riley smiled, a small, victorious smirk. "Thank you. I am excited to see it. As I mentioned, that BFT offer was very, very generous. It is nice to feel wanted." Brenda nodded enthusiastically. "Oh, we want you. We absolutely do." She then looked at her clipboard and her smile faded, replaced by bureaucratic exhaustion. She glanced at me. "And Quinn, Brooks, for the mentorship program." "Yes, that is me," I said, standing up slowly, affecting a weary politeness. "Right, well, I have about 10 minutes before my meeting with Riley. I can see you first, quickly." She led me into a small, glass-walled office. There was no warmth. "Have a seat." I sat. In the corner of the ceiling, I noted the faint black dome of an NMS internal security camera. I knew from the blueprints that it covered the entire room, audio included. In the sub-basement, Dana was already recording, capturing this entire interaction for the abuse of power report. "So," Brenda said, tapping her pen on my thin resume, "it says here you left your last position, let's see, 8 months ago." "Yes, I took some personal time," I said, letting my voice sound small. "To reassess. I am just really eager to find a stable environment." "And your experience is marketing and communications. This mentorship program is for internal logistics and procurement. It is not really a match, is it?" "I am a very fast learner," I said, clasping my hands in my lap. "I am organized. I am really just looking for a foot in the door. I am happy to start at the bottom, answering phones, as my husband suggested." Brenda's eyes flickered. "Your husband?" "Ethan Cole," I said softly. Her expression soured, as if she had just smelled bad milk. She clearly thought I was trying to use my husband's name to get a job I was not qualified for, while Riley was a high-value referral. "I see," Brenda said. Her tone suddenly clipped. "Well, Ethan's department has nothing to do with this program. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Quinn." I gave the worst possible answer. Honestly, I have not thought that far ahead. I am just focused on getting through the next year. Maybe, hopefully, move into an administrative support role. I was performing the role of the woman Ethan had insulted, the woman who was not cut out for it. Brenda sighed, a put-upon, impatient sound. She was actively demonstrating that an unqualified candidate me was a waste of her time, while a VP-referred candidate Riley was getting a counter-offer package prepared without a single formal interview. Based on a stolen, fraudulent document, this was a gift. The procedural violations were stacking up beautifully. "We will let you know," she said, standing up. The entire interview had lasted less than 4 minutes. I thanked her and walked out, back in the waiting area. Riley was on her phone, pacing by the elevators, her voice a low, excited buzz. I lingered by the water cooler, pretending to check my own phone. Riley was talking to, I assumed, a friend. "I know. Right, it worked perfectly," she whispered, laughing. "Brenda is in there right now drawing up the paperwork. They are matching the BFT offer. Yes, that BFT. I am going to be full-time, full benefits, and a salary that is just insane." There was a pause. Riley's voice dropped, becoming conspiratorial and laced with contempt. "No, that wife of his is still unemployed. I literally just saw her. She looks terrible. Ethan told me she's not cut out for this kind of work. He said he felt bad for me, that I actually deserved a shot and she didn't. So he gave me the offer. It was nothing, just a bit of rearranging." She laughed again. "Total small-timer. Anyway, I gotta go. Time to sign my new life away." She hung up, still smirking, and swept back into the HR office, the conquering hero. I stood by the water cooler. I had it all. The confirmation of the theft, the confirmation of the conspiracy, the confirmation that both my husband and his mistress viewed me as a helpless, unemployable fool. They believed they had won. I walked to the elevator, my cheap heels making a dull, sad sound on the marble. I stepped inside and the doors slid shut. I pulled out my other phone, the encrypted one. I sent a single text message to Dana Mercer. "Activate the emergency shareholder meeting schedule. I want to do this while they're still talking about winning." The emergency summons for the Nova Meridian Solutions board meeting went out at 9 in the morning. The meeting was called for 3 o'clock that same afternoon. The brevity and the mandatory nature of the summons, which came not from their own CEO but from Caldwell Kinetic Group, had sent a ripple of pure panic through the entire executive floor. They were all there, gathered in the main boardroom on the top floor, 7 board members, plus the NMS chief legal officer and the CEO. They sat around the massive, polished mahogany table, whispering nervously, checking their phones. And then there was Ethan. He was also in the room, seated at the side, as was customary for vice presidents. But he was not nervous. He was preening. He wore his most expensive suit, a dark charcoal gray, with a crisp blue tie. He had confided in 2 of the board members, his friends Greg and Mark, that CKG had gotten wind of his masterful handling of the BFT poaching attempt. He had neutralized the threat, he told them, and simultaneously secured a high-value PR talent, Riley Hart. He was convinced this meeting was to officially announce his promotion to senior vice president, a reward for his loyalty and quick thinking. He felt untouchable. At exactly 3:01, the heavy double doors swung open. It was not Dana Mercer. It was not a team of gray-suited lawyers from CKG. It was me. I had shed the skin of Quinn Brooks, the unemployed wife. Today, I was Caldwell. I wore a bespoke, razor-sharp black suit. My hair was pulled back into a severe, polished chignon at the nape of my neck. The only sound in the dead silent room was the sharp, rhythmic click of my heels on the marble floor. Clipped to the lapel of my jacket was not a visitor's pass, but a matte black ownership card, embossed with the CKG crest. It read, "Quinn Brooks, Principal." Ethan's face went slack. The blood drained from it, leaving a sick, pale mask of confusion. "Quinn," he stammered, half rising from his chair. What are you doing?" You cannot be in here. This is a restricted. Sit down, Ethan, I commanded. My voice was not the voice he knew. It was not the soft, accommodating voice of his wife. This was the voice that approved 9-figure budgets and liquidated underperforming assets. It was cold, clear, and absolute. He sat. He gaped. I walked to the head of the table. The CEO, a man named Henderson, instinctively started to move out of the chair. I nodded, and he backed away as if I were royalty. I placed my secure laptop on the table and connected it to the room's main projector. "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice filling the room. "For those of you I have not had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Quinn Brooks." I looked across the table at Victor Hale, the oldest and sharpest member of the board. I saw a flash of dawning, horrified recognition in his eyes. He was the only one present who had signed the final acquisition papers 3 years ago. He had seen the signature Q, Brooks on the final proxy, but had assumed it was a Quentin or Quinton. "Ethan, what is this?" Greg, his friend, asked, trying to sound jovial. "Is this some kind of presentation she is doing for you?" "I am the founder and sole proprietor of the Caldwell Kinetic Group," I announced, cutting him off. The whispering stopped. The air became thin. "Which means I am the majority owner of Nova Meridian Solutions. I am, for all intents and purposes, your boss." I clicked the first slide onto the 80-inch monitor. It was a simple, brutal organizational chart. At the very top, a single box, Caldwell Kinetic Group, proprietor Quinn Brooks. Notarized, branching down from it was a web of shell corporations, which all fed into one entity, Nova Meridian Solutions. Controlling interest, 62%. "As you can see," I said, pacing slowly, "CKG holds a 62% stake in this company. I own 100% of CKG. This company, this building, and every salary in it belong to me." I looked directly at Ethan. He was pale green. "Which brings us to why we are here," I continued, clicking to the next slide. "A critical systemic failure of security, ethics, and governance." The screen lit up with video. "Exhibit A," I said. "This is a feed from the security system at my home, time-stamped yesterday at 4:03 p.m. The entire room watched the high-definition footage of Ethan arriving home. They watched him open the secure drop box. They watched him pull out the BFT envelope. They watched him read my name. They watched the ugly, triumphant smirk. And they watched him conceal it in his briefcase. "Quinn, this is insane," Ethan tried, his voice high and thin. "You are showing them. This is private." "This," I said, "is a CKG asset, a secure Dropbox on CKG property, and this," I clicked again, "is Exhibit B, the home office of Mr. Cole, timestamp 4:07 p.m. The feed from the smoke detector camera filled the screen. The room watched, in horrified silence. As Ethan tore open the BFT letter, they watched him lay it flat. They watched him take out his personal cell phone and meticulously photograph every single page. And finally, Exhibit C, the screen split, showing the photographs next to a text log. A data capture from Mr. Cole's device sent to an external, unauthorized party. The texts were magnified for all to see. "This is it, the opportunity I told you about. OMG, Ethan, is this real? I told you I could pull some strings. It is yours." And the final damning lines. "Do not worry about that. My wife does not have your background. She would not last a day. It would be a complete waste." "You spied on me," Ethan roared, finally finding his voice, though it was cracked with panic. "That is illegal. You cannot do this." "That is my house, Ethan," I replied, my voice dangerously quiet. "That is my security system, which you believed was an NMS perk, and that was a confidential document, a test of protocol, belonging to my company, a test which you have just failed catastrophically in front of the entire board." I turned to the stunned faces at the table. The test was simple. I created that offer letter with BFT's CEO to test the integrity of our senior management. to see what would happen when sensitive, high-value competitor data was introduced. And what happened, my husband, your vice president of operations, did not report it. He did not secure it. He stole it. He stole it to give to his mistress. The silence in the room was absolute. It was broken by Victor Hale. He stood up, placing his hands flat on the table. He did not look at Ethan. He looked only at me. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, his voice a low, controlled rumble. "Am I to understand, for the official record, that Mr. Cole, an officer of this company, intercepted a classified partner document and transmitted it to an external civilian, specifically his paramour?" "That is exactly what I'm stating, Mr. Hale," I confirmed. "And it gets worse. That paramour, a Miss Riley Hart, a short-term contractor, is, at this very moment, being fast-tracked through your HR department, using that stolen document as leverage for a six-figure salary." I clicked one last time. The screen showed the video from Brenda Michaels' HR office. It showed my interview, the 4-minute dismissal. Then it showed Riley, confident and victorious, being handed her new employment package. "Your company," I said, "is so structurally compromised by nepotism and favoritism that a man can steal a document, give it to his mistress, and have your HR department reward her for it, all while dismissing other candidates out of hand. Mr. Cole has not only violated his contract, his NDA, and federal wire fraud statutes, he has exposed this entire company to catastrophic legal action." I turned off the projector. The room was plunged back into the afternoon light. Ethan was now just a small, sweating man in an expensive suit. "This rot," I said, "stops now. I am calling for an immediate board vote. I move to place Vice President Ethan Cole on immediate, unpaid suspension, pending a full internal and federal investigation to be led by my team at CKG. Furthermore, I move to suspend his entire senior management circle, Greg, Mark, and Paul, all of whom have fostered this toxic, high-risk environment. We will begin a full audit of their expenses and hiring practices, effective immediately." I looked at Victor Hale. "We have the votes. This is not a request. It is a notification. Remove them." Ethan was escorted from the boardroom by NMS security, his face a mask of puce-colored rage. His friends, Greg and Mark, were collected from their offices shortly after, looking bewildered, like sheep being led to a slaughter they did not understand. The top floor of Nova Meridian Solutions fell into a stunned, terrified silence. I did not stay to watch. I took the private executive elevator down to the garage, bypassing the lobby, and drove home. I did not go upstairs to the master bedroom. I did not go to the kitchen. I went straight to the sub-basement, my true center of operations. Riley Hart still thought she had a new job. She was, at this very moment, probably texting friends, celebrating her massive new salary, bragging about how she had been headhunted. It was time to correct that assumption. "Donna," I said, initiating the secure call. "He took the bait. The board has suspended him and his inner circle, effective immediately. The audit is green-lit." "Congratulations," Dana said, her voice devoid of emotion. It was not a celebration. It was a completed task. "What is the directive for the asset, R?" "Miss Hart," I said, savoring the name. "She is not an asset. She is a loose end, and she is a thief. I want the legal department to draft a package for her. Send it via the same bonded courier we used for the BFT letter. I want it on her doorstep by morning." "Contents." "Everything," I said. "But let's give it a title, something ambitious. Call it the Executive Advancement Package." The package that arrived at Riley Hart's apartment at 8:15 the next morning was thick, heavy, and looked impressively official. The cover letter, on heavy CKG letterhead, bore the title I had suggested. Inside, however, there was no employment contract. There was no welcome bonus check. Instead, the first page was a formal notification. It stated that she, Riley Hart, was the subject of a corporate and federal investigation regarding the conspiracy to misappropriate confidential, proprietary, and sensitive partner materials. Behind that first page were the exhibits. We included, with no redactions, the full-color, high-resolution photographs Ethan had taken of the BFT offer letter. We included the complete time-stamped log of their text exchange, her excited OMG, and his damning reply, "My wife does not have your background. It would be a complete waste." We included the NMS security log showing her arrival for her interview and the HR file noting that her counteroffer was based on the BFT offer. The final pages were the offer part of the package. It was a conditional offer, drafted by my best lawyers, Miss Hart. The letter explained, had two options. Option 1. She could cooperate fully as a material witness against Ethan Cole. This would involve a sworn deposition, provided immediately, detailing her role in the affair and the theft of the letter. If she chose this path, CKG would agree not to pursue a civil suit against her for damages related to the security breach. Option 2. She could decline. In that case, CKG would immediately file a multi-million-dollar civil suit against her for tortious interference and conspiracy to commit corporate espionage. Furthermore, we would be legally obligated to report her actions to the federal contractor debarment list, a very real, very permanent list. It would ensure that not only would she never get another job at NMS, she would never work for any defense contractor, logistics company, or government agency in the United States, ever again. She would be blacklisted from the entire industry. As that package was being signed for, I had Dana execute the second, simpler step. A curt, one-paragraph memo was sent to Brenda Michaels in the NMS Human Resources Department. It read, "It has come to our attention that applicant Riley Hart has demonstrated significant material dishonesty in her recent application materials and has been identified as a party to a major security breach. Her offer of employment is rescinded, effective immediately. All contact with her from NMS is to cease." I was in the sub-basement, monitoring my systems. When the fallout began, it took exactly 12 minutes from the courier's delivery confirmation for Riley to make her first call. Not to a lawyer, not to me. She called Ethan. He was, of course, at home, having been barred from his office. His NMS company phone had been deactivated. She called his personal cell, a line I was, naturally, monitoring. I listened as the call connected. Her voice was not the smug, confident whisper I had overheard in the HR waiting room. It was a high-pitched, hysterical shriek. Ethan, what did you do? What did you do?" His voice was rough, angry, and confused. "What are you talking about? My wife. She showed up. She suspended me. Riley, the bitch suspended me." You told me she was nothing?" Riley was sobbing now, the words tumbling out. "I just got a package, Ethan, from lawyers. They know everything. They have the texts. They have the letter. They are talking about federal investigations and suing me. They said they are going to blacklist me. What did you do?" "What?" "She cannot do that," he blustered, but the panic in his own voice was unmistakable. She is just trying to scare you. It is a bluff. It is a domestic dispute. That is all. She is crazy." "This is not a dispute, Ethan. This is a legal notice. It says CKG. Your wife is CKG. You lied to me." "She cannot prove anything," he said, his voice dropping. "She already did. She sent me the proof. She sent me our texts." The line went silent as the implication of that, and the recording of this very call, settled on him. I saved the audio file. I forwarded it immediately to Victor Hale and the NMS board, with the simple subject line, Exhibit D, further evidence of collusion and conspiracy. Then, I made my own call. I used a secure, untraceable CKG line. Riley picked up on the first ring, her voice a wet gasp. "Hello?" "Miss Hart," I said, my voice cold and clear. "This is Quinn Brooks." She made a sound like she was being strangled. Please, I did not know. I swear I did not know who you were. Ethan said. He said you were unemployed. He said it was a waste." "I know what he said, Riley. I have the messages. You participated in the theft of a classified document and used it for personal gain. That is not a misunderstanding. That is a crime." "He tricked me," she cried. He said he was helping me. He said he cared about me." "He used you," I said flatly. "And you let him. He offered you a job that was not his to give. Now, I am offering you something better." "Better," she whispered, her voice full of dread. "Yes, the chance to not be completely erased from this industry before your 30th birthday. You have my legal team's offer in your hands. You have 1 hour to decide if you are a witness or if you are a defendant." I did not wait for an answer. I hung up. 45 minutes later, her call came, this time from her lawyer. She was taking option 1. She was so terrified and so furious at Ethan for lying to her that she did not just cooperate. She sang. Her deposition, which CKG's lawyers took that very afternoon, was a masterpiece of self-preservation. She confirmed everything about the letter, the texts, the affair, but then she offered more. She wanted to burn him to the ground to make sure she was safe. She detailed the business dinners that were actually romantic getaways. She detailed the client gifts he had expensed on his NMS corporate card, which were, in fact, a pair of diamond earrings and a designer bag for her. She provided emails where he discussed setting her up with consulting contracts short-term, no-bid PR agreements, paid by NMS, for work she never actually performed. This was the something better. The letter had been a security breach. This was simple, beautiful, provable fraud. Riley, in her panic, had just handed me the evidence to move this entire affair from a corporate restructuring into a criminal investigation for embezzlement. My husband had not just betrayed me. He had not just stolen from me. He had been systematically robbing my company to fund his affair. And now, I had a sworn witness. I had his mistress, my own upgraded package, ready to testify to all of it. I was in the living room, the room he claimed he had designed, when he finally came storming in. He had not been home when I returned from the boardroom. He had, I assumed, been driving around Ridgeport, absorbing the shock. Now, his face was a mottled, unhealthy red. His expensive suit jacket crumpled in his fist. He had clearly heard from Riley. "What did you do?" he shouted, his voice echoing in the cavernous, silent room. He threw his briefcase, a gift from me, against the wall. It hit with a dull thud. I did not flinch. I was sitting on the Italian leather sofa, sipping water, a laptop open on my lap. I slowly looked up from my screen. "I called a board meeting," I said, my voice calm. "A board meeting." "You called? You? Who are you?" he demanded, stepping toward me, his body vibrating with a rage I had never seen. You are my wife. You are a marketer. You are unemployed. I am the person who pays your salary. Ethan," I said, closing the laptop. "Or rather, I was—" He stopped, his mouth hanging open. "CKG, Caldwell Kinetic. Caldwell, my God, it is you, this whole time." "This whole time," I confirmed. His confusion curdled back into rage, but this time it was laced with a new, desperate cunning. He saw his leverage. "You think you are smart, Quinn. You think you are a genius. You just used a multi-billion-dollar corporation to settle a domestic dispute. You just destroyed my career, our friends' careers, because you found out I was sleeping with someone." He pointed a shaking finger at me. "I am going to the press. I am going to the Boston Globe. I am going to every financial reporter in this country. I will tell them the owner of Caldwell Kinetic is a vindictive, unstable woman who uses her companies to spy on her husband and enact petty revenge. I will destroy you. I will destroy this company." It was a good threat, an excellent one. It was exactly what I had been waiting for. "You cannot," I said simply. "Watch me." "No, you literally cannot. I had my attorneys send a copy to your personal email about an hour ago. Check your phone." He fumbled for his phone, his bravado faltering. I watched as he opened his email, his eyes scanning the first page of the legal document. "This is our prenup," he whispered, his voice hollow. It is, I agreed. And I suggest you read Article 4, Section 2, the one you initialed, the one that states all assets, holdings, trusts, and corporate entities related to Caldwell Kinetic Group and its subsidiaries, known or unknown, past, present, and future, are the sole and separate property of Quinn Brooks. But more importantly, I suggest you read Article 7, the Non-Disclosure and Non-Disparagement Clause. I stood up, walking over to the bar to refill my water. The moment you go to the press, the moment you breathe my name, my company's name, or the details of this separation to anyone, you forfeit your entire, negligible buyout, and more than that, Ethan, you will be in material breach of contract, and my legal team will sue you into a hole you will never, ever crawl out of. He looked up from the phone, his face gray. He had signed it 7 years ago, so eager to get his hands on the woman he thought was a simple, wealthy consultant. He never read the fine print. You planned this, he breathed. From the beginning. I planned for a future, I said. This is it. I left him standing in the living room, staring at the financial execution warrant I had served him years ago. He was trapped, but a cornered animal is the most dangerous. With his legal and financial avenues cut off, he turned to the only one he had left pure destruction. He left the house. I tracked his car. He went to a dark steakhouse bar downtown. Not his usual haunt. It was where you went to make deals you did not want seen. He met his suspended friends, Greg, Mark, and Paul, all 3 of them, red-faced, terrified, and furious. They had all received the same email. They were on unpaid leave. Their corporate cards were cut off. They were locked out of the system. I was not in the bar with them, of course, but I did not need to be. Jonah was a junior manager in Ethan's division. Young, brilliant, ambitious. He was also disgusted by Ethan's boys' club culture. I had identified him 6 months ago. Dana had quietly promoted him, given him a raise, and brought him into Ethan's orbit as a protégé. He was my insurance policy. When Ethan called him, desperate to rally his troops, Jonah had, of course, agreed to come. His phone was in his breast pocket, on record. I listened later that night, back in the safety of my basement. The audio file Jonah uploaded was crystal clear, overlaid with the clinking of glasses and the low murmur of the bar. Cannot be legal, Greg was saying, his voice thick. She cannot just suspend us for what being friends with her husband. She is not suspending us for that. Ethan's voice was low, guttural. She is auditing us, all of us. She is looking for a reason to fire us for cause. The affair, the letter, that was just the excuse. She is looking at our expense reports, Greg, our hiring, everything. A cold silence fell over their table. They all knew what was in those reports. The client dinners that were just golf trips, the consulting fees paid to girlfriends. So we are finished, Paul whispered. She is just going to erase us. No, Ethan said. We are not finished. If she wants to burn us, we will burn her first. We are not the only ones who know the NMS client list. We know the active bids. We know the procurement schedules. What are you saying, Ethan? Mark asked. I am saying Aegis North Dynamics, Ethan said, naming our largest and most bitter rival. They would pay a fortune for our active leads, for our client data. We download everything we can. We package it, and we walk it across the street. We will be heroes at Aegis, and by the time my wife figures out where her top-tier clients went, NMS will be gutted. My God, Ethan, Jonah's voice, calm and measured. That is treason, practically. It is a life raft, Ethan snapped. It is the only move we have left. She wants to take our careers. We will take her company. Are you in? Or are you going to let that bitch in the big house decide your future? There was a murmur of assent, drunk, terrified, and entitled. They agreed. Jonah, playing his part perfectly. Agreed too. "I am in," he said. "Of course, I am in." The file ended. I sat in the dark for a long moment. This was it. The final, stupid, arrogant mistake. He had just crossed the line from a domestic problem to a corporate problem to a federal crime. I attached the audio file to a new email. I sent it to Victor Hale, the NMS board, and the head of our corporate legal department. My message was brief. "Gentlemen, Exhibit E. The situation has escalated from internal fraud to active corporate espionage. My recommendation is to upgrade from suspension to immediate termination for cause. We must also notify the federal regulatory bodies. This is no longer a CKG audit. It is a criminal matter." The effect, the next morning, was explosive. The rumor that Ethan and his team were suspended was already flying around the NMS offices. But now, the real story began to leak. It was his wife, Cole's wife, the one who was unemployed. "She owns CKG, she owns us. She set a trap. He failed. He is out. Greg, Mark, Paul, all of them, gone." The narrative flipped. The men who had laughed at the admin assistant job were now toxic. The women they had belittled, ignored, and harassed suddenly saw an opening. The dam broke. Brenda Michaels, the same HR director who had dismissed me, suddenly found her inbox flooded. An email from a junior analyst. "I am writing to formally report Mr. Cole for inappropriate comments." A message from a department coordinator. "Mr. Wells and Mr. Cole repeatedly passed me over for a promotion in favor of male colleagues with less experience." A line formed outside her office. The toxic, frat boy culture that Ethan had cultivated, the one I was going to dismantle slowly, was now imploding on its own. The board, seeing the audio file from me and the flood of internal complaints, was terrified. They were not just looking at a breach of contract. They were looking at a massive, class-action hostile workplace lawsuit. They had to act. My petty revenge had just become their corporate imperative for survival. With the board's panicked, unanimous approval, I gave the order from my basement. I officially signed the directive to launch Operation Clean Slate. This was not a suggestion or a simple review. It was a deep, invasive corporate purge. The directive authorized a full forensic audit of the operations, marketing, and business development divisions, the entire fiefdom run by Ethan and his friends, stretching back 36 months. Every expense, every hire, every contract was to be examined. The first moves were electronic and immediate. At precisely 9:01 in the morning, the NMS Chief Financial Officer, acting on my direct CKG order, placed a permanent administrative lock on the corporate American Express accounts of Ethan Cole, Greg, Mark, and Paul. Simultaneously, their access to the company's expense reporting software was downgraded from manager to read-only. They could see what they had spent, but they could never file, approve, or delete another entry. My forensic accounting team, dispatched from CKG headquarters, was already logged into the NMS servers. They did not just look at the last quarter. They pulled 3 years of data. They began cross-referencing. They pulled the hotel folios from business trips and matched the check-in dates to Ethan's personal calendar. Finding the trips that coincided with his sick days, they flagged the restaurant charges from bars at 2 in the morning. Labeled as client entertainment, they isolated a recurring monthly charge for a floral subscription service, one I recognized as the service that sent bouquets to Riley's apartment, not the office. They began building a meticulous, ironclad case for embezzlement. While finance was digging into the past, I ordered human resources to clean up the present. Brenda Michaels, now terrified for her own job, was given a simple, non-negotiable directive review every single hire made by or recommended by Ethan's team in the last 2 years. She was to look for any other Riley Harts, any other candidates, especially female, hired for roles they were not qualified for, any other special referrals who had bypassed standard protocol. Her entire department was now in damage control mode, desperate to prove their own compliance to the new ownership. In parallel, The IT department was securing the perimeter. This was the most critical step. Ethan's recorded conversation about selling data to Aegis North Dynamics had triggered every alarm. His corporate credentials email, server access, VPN, building keycard were not just suspended, they were permanently deleted. His user profile was purged, but his devices were not. The IT team was instructed to activate real-time monitoring on the company-issued laptop and phone still in his possession. If he so much as typed Aegis into a draft email, if he plugged in a USB drive, if he attempted to wipe the hard drive, I would get an instant alert. He was holding a locked box, and he did not know I was watching his hands, waiting for him to try and pick the lock. With the internal cleanup underway, Dana handled the external. She personally drafted and sent a letter to the CEO of Brighton Federal Technologies. It was a masterpiece of corporate diplomacy. She explained that CKG had recently conducted a Level 1 internal security audit at its subsidiary, NMS, to test for vulnerabilities in data handling and executive integrity. She thanked him for his assistance in providing the test scenario, the offer letter. She was pleased to report that the audit was successful. The vulnerability Ethan had been identified and neutralized immediately. The letter reassured him that NMS security was now stronger than ever, and that CKG appreciated its partnership. It was a power move. It framed the entire, messy, humiliating affair as a cold, calculated, and successful security drill. It told BFT, and by extension, the entire industry, that Caldwell Kinetic was always watching, and we always found our own problems first. The NMS board, desperate to be seen as proactive, followed CKG's lead. At noon, an all-staff email was blasted across the company, signed by Victor Hale. It announced a new company-wide zero favoritism policy, effective immediately. Any personal referral for any position, from intern to VP, would require a formal review and sign-off from two separate, non-related department heads, as well as final approval from HR. It was a bureaucratic solution, but its message was clear: the days of hiring your friends and mistresses were over. The email did not name Ethan. It did not have to. The effect was immediate. By the end of the day, 3 mid-level managers who were loyal to Ethan and who had undoubtedly participated in his expense padding and toxic behavior had quietly tendered their resignations. They saw the forensic audit coming. They knew what was on their corporate cards. They chose to run rather than be investigated. This was exactly what I wanted. I did not want to fire dozens of people. I wanted the rot to cut itself out. The bloodletting was voluntary. The next day, I went to the NMS office. I did not go to the top-floor boardroom. I did not go to HR. I had Jonah Wells, my man on the inside, gather a small group of employees in a mid-level conference room. They were the ones whose complaints had flooded HR. The women Ethan and his friends had belittled. The talented analysts they had ignored. They were nervous, unsure why they had been summoned. I walked in. I was not wearing the polyester unemployed costume. I was wearing the same black suit I had worn to the board meeting. "Good morning," I said. "My name is Quinn Brooks. I am the owner of this company." I watched their faces. I watched the shock, the dawning understanding. I saw the woman Ethan had called that mousy girl from Data, the one who he had refused to promote, visibly straighten her spine. I have been made aware of the unprofessional environment that several members of senior management cultivated here, I said, my voice even. I am here to tell you that this is over. The individuals responsible for that environment are no longer with this company. Their policies are no longer in effect. I paused, looking at each of them. "Jonah Wells," I said, turning to him. "Effective immediately. You are the acting head of operations for Nova Meridian Solutions. You will report directly to Dana Mercer at CKG. Your first task is to review the personnel files of everyone in this room and ensure their compensation and titles reflect their actual contributions, not the biases of their former managers." It was a coronation and a declaration of war, all in one. I had just promoted a 30-year-old junior manager to Ethan's job, and I had instructed him to bypass the entire NMS hierarchy and report directly to my holding company. I was showing them, and the entire company, who was truly in charge. The whispers in the hallway were no longer about poor, unemployed Mrs. Cole. The tone had changed from pity to a kind of terrified awe. The woman they thought was a joke, the woman their VP openly mocked, was the one who held the keys to the entire kingdom. The ghost had just turned on all the lights. The audio file of Ethan's conspiracy to commit corporate espionage landed on the NMS board's desks like a grenade. His pathetic, drunken plan, recorded in perfect clarity by Jonah Wells, had changed the game. This was no longer just an ethics violation. It was a criminal enterprise. My first move was to ensure he could not take one more step. While he was likely at home, nursing a hangover and trying to figure out how to access his locked NMS accounts, a legal courier was already en route. This courier delivered a letter not from me, but from the CKG General Counsel. It was a formal cease and desist and a warning of litigation. The letter explicitly informed him that we were aware of his conspiracy discussed with other suspended NMS employees to misappropriate and transfer proprietary client data and trade secrets belonging to Nova Meridian Solutions, a CKG subsidiary. It cited, in chilling detail, the specific federal statutes he was threatening to violate, including the Economic Espionage Act of 1996. It informed him that any attempt to contact a competitor, specifically Aegis North Dynamics, would be viewed as an overt act in this conspiracy, and we would immediately file for an injunction and seek full damages, both civil and criminal. He thought he was planning a life raft. I had just informed him, in 6 pages of dense legal text, that he was actually planning to commit a federal felony punishable by up to 10 years in prison. But a legal letter only works if the recipient is smart enough to be scared. Ethan was arrogant and desperate. I needed to cut off his escape route before he even tried to use it. I needed to make him toxic. My next call was to a contact at the Massachusetts Business Journal, a senior editor who owed me a favor from an old media deal. I did not give her a press release. I gave her a rumor. I cannot go on record, I told her, my voice low and confidential. But my sources inside NMS are saying the company is undergoing a massive internal restructuring. They found a whole cell of, let's call it, executive favoritism. Apparently, it went all the way up to a senior VP. My source says they were handing out jobs to unqualified mistresses, padding expense accounts. Just a total mess. CKG, the parent company, found out and cleaned house overnight, fired the entire ring. They are being praised internally for acting so fast. It was the perfect narrative. It named no one. It violated no NDAs. It painted NMS and CKG as strong, decisive, and ethical. The story ran on the Journal's website that afternoon, under the headline, NMS Cleans House, CKG Roots Out, Executive Favoritism in Swift Internal Audit. The article was immediately forwarded to every executive in the Boston Defense Tech corridor. The message was clear. NMS had just fired a group of senior managers for cause. Ethan, of course, was too stupid to see the trap. His phone records, which I was still monitoring, showed his next move. Panicked by the legal letter and the public rumors, he made the exact call I knew he would. He called a VP he knew at Aegis North Dynamics. He never got past the man's assistant. He tried again. The call went straight to voicemail. He did not know that Dana Mercer had already sent a courtesy email to Aegis's general counsel that morning. It was a simple, professional note. As a matter of intercompany courtesy, we wish to inform you that Ethan Cole, Greg, and Mark have been terminated from NMS for cause, relating to attempted misappropriation of our client IP. We are confident in your firm's commitment to ethical practices. Regards, CKG. His life raft had been sunk before he even left the dock. Aegis North Dynamics would not touch him. No one in the industry would. He was not just unemployed. He was radioactive. With his professional avenues closed, I moved on to the personal. Riley Hart's sworn deposition was complete. My legal team had spent 6 hours with her, in her terrified, furious effort to save herself. She had provided more than I ever could have hoped for. She had handed over screenshots of every conversation, every hotel receipt, every consulting invoice for work she never did. But it was one specific anecdote, buried in page 54 of the transcript, that I was looking for. He said the BFT offer was a waste on his wife. She had told the lawyer, her voice trembling on the audio playback. He said, and this was his exact word, that she wasn't high class enough to ever get a job like that, that I had the look and the drive, and she was just a faded small-town wife. I exported that single page of the transcript. I attached it, along with the summary of his embezzlement from the CKG audit, to a new file. I sent it to my personal divorce attorney. The next morning, Ethan was served with divorce papers. The petition was not based on simple infidelity. It was based on a pattern of economic, professional, and emotional sabotage. And Exhibit A, attached for the judge to read, was the sworn testimony of his own mistress, detailing his conspiracy to steal my professional opportunity, his criminal misuse of company funds, and his direct recorded contempt for my character. His affair was no longer a personal failing. It was a legal exhibit proving his fraudulent nature. The NMS board, meanwhile, was in full-blown panic. They now had proof of criminal conspiracy and a mountain of HR complaints. Victor Hale, seeing the potential for catastrophic lawsuits, made a proposal to protect the company. He proposed that NMS proactively invite the Federal Contractor Oversight Board, a regulatory body, and one of CKG's primary contacts, to conduct an independent review of their hiring and accounting practices. It was a brilliant move. It showed the government they had nothing to hide. It also meant that the investigation into Ethan Cole was now completely out of my hands. It was no longer his wife accusing him. It was a federal auditor, reviewing the cold, hard facts of his embezzlement and his conspiracy. His fate was sealed. The final, smallest blade came that afternoon, with the divorce petition filed and the evidence of embezzlement submitted. My lawyer had successfully motioned for an emergency freeze on all joint assets. I was in my basement office when I saw the notification from the bank. A charge had been attempted on our joint checking account, the account Ethan used for daily expenses, the one he managed for me. The charge was for $89.41 at a local liquor store. It was declined. I imagined him standing there, his suit jacket crumpled, his company car scheduled for repossession, his industry contacts screening his calls, the media celebrating his anonymous downfall, his mistress testifying against him, and now, his card, the last vestige of his domestic power, was a useless piece of plastic. He had no job, he had no money, he had no future. I closed the laptop. I had not laid a hand on him. I had not raised my voice. I had not shed a single tear in front of him. I had simply arranged the facts. I had allowed the world to see him as he was, and the world had done the rest. He finally, truly understood. The unemployed wife he pitied, the woman who wasn't high class enough, was the one who could not only write his history in the defense industry, but erase it completely. For 2 weeks, the silence was a heavy, suffocating blanket. Ethan was trapped in my house, a ghost in his own life. His corporate cards were useless plastic. His joint account was frozen. His name was mud in the press, even if it had never been explicitly printed. He was a man with no power, no money, and no future. And then, I sent the summons. It came from Victor Hale, on official NMS letterhead. A special meeting of the board was called. He was not invited as a VP. He was compelled to attend as the subject of the internal investigation, to provide his final statement before the board rendered its decision. He probably thought this was his chance, his one last opportunity to plead his case, to spin his lies, to paint me as the hysterical, vindictive wife. He probably spent the morning rehearsing his speech. When he was escorted into the main boardroom by security, he was not met by a sympathetic panel of his old friends. I was at the head of the table. To my right sat Dana Mercer. her eyes like chips of ice. To my left, Victor Hale, representing the board. Lining the rest of the table were two senior lawyers from CKG's legal counsel, and on the massive 80-inch monitor at the far end of the room, a single, dark, empty video feed window was waiting. Ethan looked terrible. He had not slept. His suit, the one he had worn with such arrogance, was wrinkled. "Ethan, sit," Victor Hale commanded, his voice devoid of any warmth. He sat, his eyes flickering between me and the lawyers. "Victor, Quinn, look, I know how this looks, but you have to let me explain. This is a domestic dispute that got out of hand. She entrapped me." "This is not a dispute, Mr. Cole," one of the lawyers said, opening a file. "This is a termination hearing. We are simply here to inform you of your options." "Options," he scoffed, a bead of sweat on his temple. "This is a setup. You have no proof of anything, just the word of a bitter woman." I did not say a word. I simply picked up my remote and turned on the projector. "Let's review the timeline," I said, my voice cutting through the room. "First, the theft." The screen lit up with the doorbell camera footage of him stealing the BFT letter from my Dropbox. Second, the conspiracy. The screen filled with the high-resolution images of his texts to Riley Hart, his lies, his dismissal of me. "My wife does not have your background. It would be a complete waste." Third, the attempted sale of proprietary data. The audio file Jonah had recorded filled the room, his own voice, drunk and arrogant, outlining his plan to sell NMS client data to Aegis North Dynamics. "We will be heroes at Aegis." Ethan turned a pale, sickly shade of gray. He looked at Victor Hale, who stared back at him with utter contempt. "And finally," I said, "the direct result of your favoritism, which has exposed this company to massive liability." The HR footage played, showing Riley's smug interview and my own 4-minute dismissal by Brenda Michaels. I turned off the projector. The room was silent. "You have two options, Ethan," I said, sliding two thick-bound folders across the polished table. "Folder A is a general release. You will agree to a termination for cause, effective immediately. You will forfeit all severance, all stock options, and all bonuses. You will be bound by a permanent, ironclad non-disclosure and non-compete agreement. You will never work in this industry again. But if you sign it, you will likely stay out of prison." I pushed the second folder toward him. It was thicker. "Folder B," I said, "is the alternative. This is the complete investigative file. It includes Miss Hart's sworn deposition, the full forensic accounting of your embezzlement, the audio file of your conspiracy, and the testimonies from the half-dozen female employees who have filed harassment claims against you since your suspension. If you do not sign Folder A, we will immediately transmit Folder B to the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Federal Contractor Oversight Board. The choice is yours." He stared at the folders, his hands shaking. You bitch," he whispered. "You cannot prove. It is my word against hers, Riley. She will not testify. She loves me." "Will she, Ethan?" I asked. I nodded to Dana. Dana clicked her mouse. The dark video window on the monitor lit up. Riley Hart appeared. Live, from her lawyer's office. She looked pale, terrified, and small. "Miss Hart," one of my lawyers said, "please confirm for the board what Mr. Cole told you regarding the BFT offer letter addressed to his wife." Ethan shot up from his chair. "Riley, do not say anything. They are trapping you." Riley flinched, but her lawyer put a hand on her arm. She looked directly into the camera, her voice trembling but clear. He told me. He said his wife, Quinn, wasn't high class enough to get a job like that. He said she was a small-town wife who got lucky, and that the offer was a waste on her. He said it was better if I used it, because I deserved it." I clicked the video feed off. Riley vanished. Ethan collapsed back into his chair, a broken, empty vessel. I stood up and walked to his side of the table. I looked down at him, This man I had once loved. This man who had called me a waste. You still do not understand. Do you? I said, my voice low. You did not just betray a marriage that I could have handled. You compromised a multi-million-dollar security protocol I designed to protect this company. You jeopardized the contracts that ensure the paychecks of thousands of employees. You put their jobs, their families, at risk, all to impress a 29-year-old girl with a fake handbag. You did not just fail me. Ethan, you failed every single person who works for this company. He looked at folder B. He knew the audio file of the bar conversation, the one where he planned the data theft. Did not just name him, it named Greg, it named Mark, it named Paul. He knew if he chose folder B, he would not just be sending himself to prison, he would be taking his entire club down with him. With a shaking, defeated hand, he reached out, pulled folder A toward him, and signed his name. The lawyer took the document. We are done here, Victor Hale said. Almost, I said. I pulled one last document from my own briefcase and slid it in front of him. It was the divorce petition. This, I said, is not optional. This is a notification. As you know from the prenup you signed, you get nothing. The house is mine. The cars are mine. The life you thought you had built was mine. You have 48 hours to vacate the property. He stared at the petition, his last shred of dignity gone. He pushed himself up from the table, a man who had lost his job, his reputation, his friends, his wife, and his mistress, all in the span of a few weeks. He walked toward the door, a hollow shell. As his hand touched the handle, I spoke one last time, my voice soft, almost conversational. Oh, and Ethan, a piece of advice for the future. The next time you want to give a gift to your mistress, make sure it belongs to you first. The door clicked shut behind him. The room was silent. Then, Victor Hale cleared his throat and the legal team began to organize the signed documents, starting the next phase of the cleanup. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Please comment below and let us know where you are listening from. We would love to connect and share our thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to Zoe Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.